did to kind of get at it in a more systematic way. That first weekend, that Saturday, I just read the New York Times. I didn't know what happened Friday night. And it was just, my blood just boiled. I just felt like there's a million people who contribute so much to this country were in danger. And that what was at stake wasn't just the moment, but the generations that follow us. And I just had flashes in my mind of what happened to the Japanese in World War II, being scapegoated. And that the stakes could not be higher. So my wife was sitting right here, saw me. I never got out of my pajamas a whole day, but I just started working the phone. And I called leaders of 4 prominent Iranian-American organizations, PARS Equality, IABA, NIAC, and PAIAA, and said, that's for Saturday, I want you in my office tomorrow. And then I called Kristen Clark, Lourdes' predecessor, who used to run the Civil Rights Division at the New York AG, who now runs the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and who's a longtime friend of mine. I said, Kristen, we need your help. Because the Lawyers Committee's model started on with JFK and Robert Kennedy was to bring the big law firms in moments of civil rights crisis. So the Lawyers Committee stepped up, and they brought in Arnold and Porter K. Scholler, and I asked that firm to join us because one of their lead partners ran the refugee program at the State Department under Obama. So in total in our office, there were 50 people either in my office or by phone, and I kind of outlined a vision of how we can go forward. And like I said, it brought the best out of us. The 4 organizations united behind the civil rights approach to this case. We're organizations who divert their resources fighting discrimination, and when discrimination collides with their mission, can go to court and try to stop the discrimination. Leila Austin of PAIAA. So she, and Nagar, she was there, she could tell you that. So Dr. Austin was beautiful. She's a PhD in Middle East Studies, and she explained the Iranian-American immigration community, how we came starting in the 50s, and people came for education, and then they stayed, and then a second wave came starting in the late 70s, and then a third wave that's more recent, and she documented each of these things. And then I asked her, in the mission, what has PAIAA's mission is to highlight the contributions of Iranian Americans to give back to America what America's given to us. So I said, can you give us some examples of public service? And she gave a litany of Iranian American leaders and everything from treasury to ambassadors and so on. And then she brought out San Bernardino. Keep in mind the first time that Trump talked about a Muslim ban was in the wake of San Bernardino, that tragedy. Well, what was the connection between Iranian Americans and San Bernardino? 1, we had a victim there. 2, the first responder was an Iranian American medic. So when you look at the words of the travel ban and it mentions San Bernardino, targets Iranians, keep that in mind. So she brought that out. And then I asked her, because I know behind a lot of this immigrant bias or discrimination is economic anxiety. So I asked her to show us the ways that Iranian Americans contribute to the American economy, create jobs and innovation, which of course is an easy story to tell. Because we have giants in Silicon Valley, whether it's YouTube, or Twitter, or you can go on down the line. We've contributed eBay, we've contributed so much. And then I brought out to her, which turned out to kind of flummox the other side, I said, I'd like to introduce as an exhibit a statement by Donald Trump, President of the United States, on March 22nd. And he said, on Nowruz, the most successful recent immigrant group in America is Iranian Americans. and I said, Dr. Austin, do you agree with that? She said, yes. So, and then she talked about how, what a crushing blow the travel ban has been on her organization, diverting their resources, and that there's been a pattern of hate crimes directed at Iranian Americans since the first travel ban. And I said, limited to 3 examples. She gave 3 examples, including the fatality that happened in Kansas, where immigrants from India were killed or wounded, but the killer thought he was shooting Iranian-Americans. So that's in our public record. And so you can see the transcript as I've sent it to Miriam. But then came a really crucial witness. Actually, I'm telling you a little bit of reverse order. Babak Yusufzadeh, who's the president of IABA, showed the work that the heroes and heroines that I just introduced a few minutes ago, and the other 7 chapters around the country did in response to this crisis. And Babak, to his credit, had the wisdom to set up a system to collect data of hundreds of reports. I'm talking about 5-year-olds detained in airports, grandparents not able to see their grandchildren who are just being born, students whose lives have been disrupted, business people who were just caught up in all of this. What hurts me the most was the stories about families that are disconnected and disrupted because of this. So he put all that in the record and showed the reoccurring themes, and he showed that there's harm today. That was the key thing I wanted the judge to happen, is that even though these injunctions have been in place, people are harmed today. They're people, especially as lawyers. One of the greatest gifts in the history of humanity is the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Now, I know our founding fathers had a problem with slavery, so I'd set that aside. But if you take that out, there's no greater gift. But what was one of their inspirations? They looked at the Human Rights Declaration of King Cyrus, particularly on the issue of religious tolerance. And Thomas Jefferson didn't just come up with a Bill of Rights without looking at history. He found a Human Rights Declaration as a model for the Declaration of Independence. 1 mile from our courthouse in D.C. is the Library of Congress, and in there is Thomas Jefferson's annotated book with his notes about the Cyrus Hillock. And this is a piece of irony, because not only did he fight for the Declaration of Independence, obviously, the area of the Bill of Rights he was most interested in was the First Amendment and the issue of religious tolerance. And so that was his inspiration. So that's why you need cultural exchanges, why everyone can learn from each other. So here we are today in this ironic moment. The other thing is it does a lot for all of us to reflect on our families, this whole travel ban and the fight against it. So my parents, the first wave, according to Dr. Austin, started in the 50s. Well, my dad actually and his brother came in the 40s, so I don't know if we're like a Mayflower or what, but we came way before. And, but my mother went to the University of Beirut American University of Beirut in the late 50s. And she wasn't a super activist, but she did talk out and speak out against the Shah. And when she went back to Iran, she was just talking among her friends. It turns out that Savat was like listening to all the things she was saying and had a huge file on her of all the things she spoke out about. So she was submitted to the first travel ban. She was not allowed to leave the country. And she wasn't allowed to complete her education. So my dad somehow figured out a way for her to come here. But I bring this up to say that every Iranian-American, like every recent immigrants, we appreciate this country in a more profound way, I think, than other people in a lot of ways, because we don't take for granted freedom. We don't take for granted the Bill of Rights. That's why we contribute so much. There's no one more patriotic than us. 3 of my cousins, volunteered to be in the Marines. No one asked them to do that. No one required them to do that. So I just think that we have to really stand up for ourselves, and that's why I tried so hard to have that live testimony. So going forward, I think this is, again, thinking about reflections, we need to really reconsider who we are as Iranian-American lawyers. And we have great ambitions, and we contribute in a lot of different ways as lawyers in every kind of discipline of law. But I think after what we've gone through the last few months, we really have to think of ourselves as protectors of this community. Because this is something that is shocking that's happened to us, and we have to build a kind of fortress so that we protect not only this moment, but the generations to follow. So I'm going to end with something I started 15 years ago when I was worried about discrimination facing our community. And I really thought the best way to respond is with our own half-scene of goodness. We have the half-scene over here. That anytime someone puts us down, we have to respond with goodness. So I outlined then and I outlined today what I think we need to stand for. Religious tolerance. That's part of our history. And even though it's intolerance that's facing us today, we need to always be on the side of religious tolerance. And then we have to oppose discrimination in all its forms and form alliances with civil rights communities, which is what we're doing right now by working with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We have to always, and I think because we're in a special place as Iranian-American lawyers, we have to focus on democratic principles and stand up for them, because we can appreciate it more than maybe some other people. And we have to not sit on the sidelines, but we have to be active citizens. Well, it's so nice to sit at the table with one of our judges who, had to run to become a judge. So we need to participate in every aspect of society, and you have to continue to highlight the successes of the Iranian-American community. So I'm up to 5. Then the last thing is to continue to contribute as professionals, as people in business, and to create jobs so we can deal with this economic anxiety. And then my 7th part of the half-scene, I leave up to you. That's the mystery one that I'll leave to you. So with that, I want to thank you so much. I can talk forever about all what we've been doing the last couple months. If you go to our website, that's called endthetravelban.com. It has all the court pleadings. We have not put up yet the hearing from Tuesday because we have the transcript, and we'll put it up probably tomorrow. And I want to thank you all for inviting me. I'm going to apologize in advance that I have to leave to get back to D.C. tonight because I have to be in court tomorrow at 9 a.m. So, but thank you all, and we appreciate all you taking.